This is an interesting choice for us to take on because as you can see, it's already very well known, considerably well recognized, award-winning game from nearly 4 years ago now. The BAFTA announcements for their final list came out 2 or 3 days ago, sort of the end of last week. So, the games that are currently in this Games for Good category, which is growing, it's more and more well defined that there is this games beyond entertainment, I think is what BAFTA is calling it this year. And they are exploring deeper social causes and a series of narratives of interaction and interactivity that sort of step beyond, beating, winning. And this game does that as well. But as I say, being that bit older, why did I want to bring it back up? Actually, partly because it's a great game. It's worth talking about its story. It's worth talking about how it was developed, because we are talking about how can content get developed. So I'll take a moment to talk there. But also, there is a subplot, let's say, to the story of the game, which is the community in which Nuna, the little girl there that you play as primarily, lives. And no surprise, if you're an Inupiaq Alaskan native, then your village, your community probably matters to you a little bit more than it does if you're living in a city with, slightly less harsh environment, slightly fewer polar bears trying to eat you, slightly fewer things that can do you damage in a day. The idea of being lonely in a city of very many millions is something that we recognize this is part of our individualism. But it's the history of this game and how it was developed. So the common thread really is that Never Alone is an artifact of cultural heritage. From that perspective, there's the telling of the other in a story that you might not have otherwise heard. There's really two pieces to that story. One is this one tale, Kanuksakaya, which is the long narrative to the game, of which maybe 2 or 3 other small stories interplay. But the research was a body of 20 or 30, a mixture of elders, a mixture of storytellers. And the games devs literally sat down with them over a series of months and said, okay, tell me more and more about your history. Tell me more and more about this. And it was an interactive discovery. So rather than someone sit down and say, okay, we need to build a game where you survive polar bears and work out what causes the blizzard, we sat down and said, okay, we want to produce a vehicle to preserve cultural history. We want to produce a vehicle that can communicate this cultural history into groups that don't know about it, that haven't heard about it, and that can then find out about it. The game they came up with is fairly simple to play, but very engaging, and I will play a little bit of it. It's a platform puzzle-solving game, so you move around either with a second player, so you can co-play it with someone on the couch. One of you plays as Nuna, somebody else can play as the fox. Or if it's just you on your own, you can toggle between the two characters. Obviously, there are some things the fox can do that Nuna can't, and vice versa, and learning how that plays out as part of the gameplay mechanic. Why this came back in this conversation like 3 or 4 years after it first came out, why it's worth touching over, is because it directly addresses the dismantling of community. And it's addressing it partly because, there are circumstances around the Inupiaq that are changing their environment. There are changing their social activity and their social history. So their community is being dismantled in part from without, but also, again, from within. I always remember the tale of, when you're learning in a school playground, why it's not nice to be nasty to someone. You learn that because you see them there and you see their reaction to when you do a nasty thing. And you feel that nasty thing, oh, that's not very good. But where you carry out that action mediated by a screen or a device of some sort, all you get is the little adrenaline thrill that you've done something wrong. You never see the impact of it. So the proximity of the reality of your effects, I think, makes a big difference. So for me, storytelling about community is a really powerful way to actually break down that sense of it's only about me, it is my competition. I can fight this and I'm in charge of running this game. It's like, no. The value has always been the community. It's a mistake to assume that it was only ever you. There's always been the group around you. You got to where you were because of the group around you. And, the Inupiaq tale is, nobody survives the winter unless there's the group around you. Okay? So it's a co-op single-player puzzle platformer. Her journey weaves this series of traditional stories around this main tale being a well-known, well-recorded tale about the blizzard. And as you go about this singular journey. So there are these little bonuses that you can find in the form of mini documentaries, so mini cultural artifacts. Okay, so just play one or two of these, because they are actually worth hearing.
My brother was out seal hunting. He got attacked from behind and managed to grab his knife and save himself. When he came to realize, oh no, it's a mother. We've always known traditionally that we avoid killing a mother. It's always been sacred to us to protect them. He had to present himself to the council, and so he was given the job to mother the baby, and we kept it. It got so big, it went over the barricade one day and got to the dog food, and that was an indication that, brother better go teach it how to survive on its own. So he did. I really got attached to the bear because I more or less grew up with it. And some days when brother took him walking, once in a great while he'd put me on the bear and I would ride on it like a horse. I was just happiest little girl in the world.
Niveaksiagarualup kangersingalok supaya ikayok tikakane bilugit. Alawlo ni dam na terigan niya. Niveaksiagarualup kangersingalok supaya ikayok tikakane bilugit. Alawlo ni dam na terigan niya. Sivuneksip ka nga nibeaksiagarualuk. Kanudun pekpaganak tilangit tamat ko ikayok tauruat.
Really great crossover in terms of both being, an educational piece as well as an emotionally engaging piece, as well as being an entertainment. Okay, so 24 little documentary films. As I say, as you move through, you'll see these little owls in different places. You just hear them, and you're like, okay, I'm going to drop off the main gameplay here and go and find that owl because I want to hear more sort of stories. There are 40-odd different cultural ambassadors, different storytellers from the community. The elders of the community all contributed to the game's development. This particular youth leader was one of those contributors, and he speaks of what it felt like to see the game's devs come back with this artifact, this educational tool. How much richer the understanding of his heritage will be to the next generation because this thing exists. I was like, okay, that's a very valid point. How many more times can we have that in games? How many more stories could we tell?
The recurring type of character in Inupiaq stories is the manslayer. And the manslayer is kind of this bad guy. And I think really what's at risk when the manslayer comes into story is the livelihood of individuals and the whole community. And so the manslayer is really used as a way to say, don't act only for yourself, always hold the community in your heart. Oftentimes in these stories, there is one person that will stand up.
And what this humble person will represent, who faces that manslayer, is a return to order, a return to true living in the community. And it just takes that one person. It could just be that one person that can help to change everything. Because everyone wants to live a good life. Everyone wants to have a good community.
And so that character turns up throughout the game. More importantly, as I start reading around this, that character is a mythic element beyond this game, beyond this story, in other versions of that story, that there's always a reason to talk about the community, that you don't survive the winter without it. But then perhaps what we need are good examples of community, good reasons to tell community stories outside of that. So that is it. Never alone. I am not alone. Actually, Kisime, my translation is awful. Ichuana is the I am not alone. For me, I think it's charming. It can be inspirational. I love the mix of documentary content versus gameplay. That's a really interesting piece to go for. It's now available on literally everything. Buy it for your phone, buy it for your computer, buy it for your game station. It really was one of the first things that BAFTA used to start carving out this gaming beyond entertainment sort of space. And I think you can probably see why. So there it is. That's Never Alone. Fairly simple gaming mechanic that's been around forever, put to an entirely unique, I think, sort of twist and new use. Hopefully you see some value in that. Thank you.